We're diving into some of the deepest, darkest, most dangerous blue holes in the ocean. Let's get right into it. Taam Ja is the deepest blue hole in the entire world. Taam Ja means deep water in the Mayan language. It's located in Sawmill Bay off the southeastern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Recently, scientists discovered that this blue hole is much deeper than they previously thought, reaching a depth of 1,380 feet. Initially, the depth of Taam Ja was estimated to be around 900 feet, but that was with echo sounder mapping, a technique that uses sound waves to measure the distance to the ocean floor. It only gives a rough estimate of depth though. But more recently, researchers used what's called a CTD profiler. This instrument has sensors that measure water conductivity, temperature, and pressure. They lowered it into the blue hole on a cable to gather precise data, and the new measurements revealed just how deep this blue hole really is. And scientists are now pretty excited about what could be lurking down there. But Taam Ja isn't the only deep, dark, and dangerous blue hole in the world. Far from it. There are blue holes all over the ocean whose depths are even more mysterious than this one. Before the discovery of Taam Ja, the deepest blue hole in the world was thought to be the Dragon Hole in the South China Sea. The Dragon Hole, also known as the Eye of the South China Sea, is a pretty remarkable underwater sinkhole in the Paracel Islands. It reaches a depth of about 987 feet. This blue hole gets its name from local legends that speak of a dragon residing in its depths, which I really wish was true. Dragons are probably at the top of my list of mythical creatures that I just wish existed. Scientists have been intrigued by the Dragon Hole for decades. After it had first been discovered by local fishermen, researchers used a Video Ray Pro 4 to explore it, which is a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV. And during these early explorations of the blue hole, they found over 20 previously undiscovered species of sea life. Next, we have the Black Hole of Andros. The Black Hole of Andros is an underwater sinkhole in the Bahamas. The hole is about 300 feet deep, so not as deep as most of the other holes on this list, but that's not what makes it so interesting. There's a drastic change in conditions as you go deeper here. Near the surface, the water is your typical clear, warm water of the Bahamas, but as you descend, there's a layer around 60 feet down that's completely devoid of oxygen and rich in hydrogen sulfide. This layer creates this kind of pinkish purple hue in the water. What's fascinating about this layer is that it mimics conditions believed to be similar to those of ancient Earth around 3.5 billion years ago. In this layer, scientists have found unique life forms that can actually survive without oxygen, so it makes for a pretty interesting place to study because it could help scientists understand more about early life on Earth. Probably goes without saying though that diving in the black hole of South Andros is very dangerous and strictly prohibited. But the Black Hole of Andros isn't the most dangerous blue hole in the world. That title goes to the Blue Hole of Dahab, aka the Red Sea Blue Hole in Egypt. There are more diving fatalities here than in any other diving site in the world. Between 1997 and 2012, there were an estimated 200 deaths at this diving site, and a lot of the danger here has to do with what's called the Arch, an 85-foot long submerged tunnel that's about 170 feet deep. The tunnel is really challenging and downright dangerous for less experienced divers. A big part of it comes down to breathing gas management. Any error along this tunnel and you can throw off the whole dive, and that can spell death. You may end up not having enough air to account for decompression stops on the way out and just run out of breathable air, which is terrifying. There's also a current that flows inward through the arch, which adds extra resistance, meaning some divers have just underestimated how long it actually takes to swim. The Red Sea Blue Hole is also rather infamous for the death of Yuri Lipsky, a Russian diving instructor who was carrying a camera on him at the time, so his last moments were caught on camera. It's an incredibly distressing video. I've watched it before. I've talked about it on the channel before at some point. But the video has also been used to help educate other divers, pointing out what he did wrong and how to avoid encountering a similar fate. Next, we head to the Czech Republic to see the deepest underwater cave in the entire world. It's really quite mind-blowing. A huge, deep hole filled with water going down way farther than you can see. The latest confirmed deepest depth in 2022 was measured to be 1,704 feet deep, but they believe it might be even deeper than that. The bottom still hasn't been reached, so who knows how far down it really goes, but it's estimated the abyss may be as deep as 2,600 to 3,900 feet. The cave is in a place called the Hranice Karst, an area known for its unique limestone formations. Water has slowly dissolved the limestone over millions of years, creating this incredibly deep abyss. Once again, we head back to the Bahamas with the Sawmill Sink. This blue hole is known for its huge collection of fossils. It's packed with history. Over the years, divers have discovered an amazing array of fossils and artifacts that have helped them piece together what the region was like before the arrival of humans, which is really cool. They pulled up bones of extinct animals like the Bohemian tortoise and crocodile, which roamed the islands thousands of years ago. One of the reasons these discoveries are so well preserved is because of the unique environment inside this sinkhole. The water is layered with fresh water on top and salt water below. This layering creates this oxygen poor zone in the middle, which helps prevent decay and keeps things in fairly good condition. Besides animal bones, divers have also found ancient human remains and artifacts. Human remains definitely less fascinating than extinct animals to a scientist, but also a lot creepier. And it's back to the Bahamas with Dean's Blue Hole. This one plunges to a depth of around 663 feet. From above, it looks like a beautiful, deep blue circle surrounded by lighter turquoise waters. Pretty breathtaking. Just like pretty much any blue hole, they all kind of look like that, but this is a popular freediving spot. Some of the world's best freedivers come here to test their limits and break records, but this kind of diving is not without its risks. One of the main dangers of Dean's Blue Hole is its depth. The deeper you go, the higher the pressure becomes, which can affect your body in serious ways. Divers can experience something called nitrogen narcosis, which is kind of like being intoxicated underwater. It makes you confused and disoriented. This is partly what led to the death of Yuri Lipsky, who we talked about earlier. Another risk is shallow water blackout, which happens when a diver loses consciousness during the ascent due to a lack of oxygen. This can be deadly if the diver isn't rescued quickly. And yes, these are dangers you'll run into at pretty much every diving site, but this is one of the most famous blue holes in the Bahamas, and a lot of people flock here not knowing the full extent of the risks. The Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize is a massive marine sinkhole over 300 meters across and 124 meters deep. This is probably one of the most famous blue holes in the entire world. Now, as for what's down there, it's never been fully mapped, but there have been a handful of expeditions, some successful, some unsuccessful. In 1971, a team of highly experienced divers collected stalactites from the blue hole and found that they had originally formed above ground, so they became submerged over time. In 2018, there was an expedition to map the cave systems of the blue hole. The scariest thing they found were the remains of 2 divers, 2 out of 3 that had gone missing while exploring years before. The Great Blue Hole is a bit of a tourist destination, at least for experienced scuba divers, but it can also be very dangerous. Next up, we have the mysterious Polynya. So not a blue hole, but in 2016, scientists discovered, or rather rediscovered, a massive hole in Antarctica. This wasn't the first time the hole was observed either. It had kind of just reappeared. The hole is what is known as a Polynya, which are areas of open water or very thin ice, completely surrounded by thick pack ice. They're still a bit of a mystery. But this Polynya in the Weddell Sea is extra strange. See, most of these holes form close to the shore, but this one is way out there. It was first discovered in 1974, but by 1976 it had completely closed up. Cut to 40 years later though, and once again the hole opened up, and it's been continuing to grow. It's now larger than the entire state of Maryland. Why did it reappear? Scientists aren't sure. They're just collecting as much data as they can. They're assuming it'll continue to grow too. It's still not as large as it was in the 70s, but will it grow larger than it was back then, or will it close up again? We just gotta wait and see. Finally, we have the discovery of ancient DNA deep in the Scotia Sea. In 2019, a team from the International Ocean Discovery Program accidentally stumbled on something really cool. In the Scotia Sea, north of mainland Antarctica, the team discovered ancient DNA samples from microorganisms 584 feet beneath the sea floor. They studied these genetic samples, looking at damage patterns in the DNA to figure out just how old they were and how old was this DNA. Well, about 1 million years old. It's the oldest DNA ever discovered from seafloor sediments to date. Up until the point of this discovery, the oldest sedimentary ancient DNA ever discovered was about 650,000 years old. It's kind of hard to believe that DNA could be studied after sitting at the bottom of the sea for 1 million years, but it was actually surprisingly well preserved. Antarctica's low temperatures play a big role in this. The sun doesn't really reach all the way down there either, so the samples hadn't been affected by UV radiation. Now, the big question on everyone's mind is, what species did this DNA hail from? Well, they're still not sure, but they were able to figure out that it didn't come from a virus or bacteria. That would have been a bit of a letdown. No, this was DNA belonging to either a plant or, even more exciting, an animal. Well, with all that said, I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.